Get out of my house, Tyler, now. I never thought I'd say those words to my own son. Not in my lifetime, not in any lifetime. But there he was, standing in my living room like he owned the air I was breathing. Expensive suit, shiny shoes, a watch that probably cost more than my old car ever did. And my husband, my Vincent, had been gone for exactly 4 hours. 4 hours! I was still wearing the same black dress from the funeral. My throat was raw from trying not to cry in front of people. My hands still smelled like church candles and folded flowers and grief. And Tyler, my son who vanished 15 years ago when I had nothing, was back. The timing was interesting. No, the timing was wrong. It was almost calculated. He looked around the house like he was studying it, like he was measuring it, like he was doing math in his head, and something cold moved through my stomach. Because I knew that look. Tyler had always had that look when he wanted something. "Mom," he said softly, like he was already practicing the role of a grieving son, "you shouldn't be alone right now." I stared at him, really stared, like if I looked hard enough I'd see the little boy he used to be. But all I saw was a stranger wearing my son's face. "You left me," I said. He blinked once, just once. And then he smiled the kind of smile people use when they're trying to win. "I know," he said, "and I'm sorry, but I'm here now." I wanted to believe him. God, I wanted to believe him. Because when a mother loses her husband, and her whole world feels like it's collapsing, any piece of family looks like a lifeline. But something in me, something deep and old, was screaming. This isn't love, this is a return. And returns always come with a price. Tyler stepped forward like he belonged. "I heard about Vincent," he said. "I came the moment I found out." My mouth opened, but nothing came out. Because in my mind, I saw Vincent's last moments. The way his fingers squeezed mine like he was trying to hold onto life through my hand. The way the machines kept making those steady sounds, until suddenly they didn't. I'd watched the strongest man I ever met become quiet. And now Tyler was standing here acting like he cared. Like he hadn't disappeared. Like he hadn't taken from me and left me to drown. I swallowed hard. "How did you hear?" Tyler hesitated, just a hair. Then he said, "People talk. Small town, news travels." I nodded slowly, but it didn't sit right. Because Tyler wasn't part of this town anymore. He hadn't been for years. And he definitely wasn't part of my life. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a folded handkerchief, clean and crisp. "Mom," he said, "sit down, you're shaking." I looked at my hands. I was shaking. And that made me angry. Because grief is one thing. But shaking in front of Tyler, after everything, that felt like losing. "I'm fine," I said, even though my voice didn't sound fine at all. Tyler's eyes traveled, just for a second, toward the hallway. Toward Vincent's office. And that's when it hit me. Tyler wasn't looking at me like a son looks at his mother. He was looking around like a man who just walked into a building with money inside. "Where's the lawyer?" Tyler asked casually. My heart sank so fast it felt like it dropped through the floor. "What?" I whispered. Tyler held up both hands like he was innocent. "Just, practical stuff," he said. "Estate, papers, what happens next?" My chest tightened. Vincent hadn't even been gone half a day, and Tyler was already talking about what comes after. I stared at him, and the room felt too quiet. Outside, I could hear a car passing on the road. Inside, I could hear the sound of my own heartbeat, hard and loud and warning me. "Frank," I said slowly, "Vincent's lawyer." Tyler nodded, as if he was filing that name away for later. "Good," he said, "good, that's good." Then he walked closer and placed his hand on my shoulder. A simple gesture. But it felt like pressure. Like a claim. "Mom," he murmured, I'm going to help you get through this. I didn't answer. Because in that moment, all I could think was, where were you when I needed help? Where were you when I was working double shifts so we wouldn't get evicted? Where were you when I cried myself to sleep from shame? Where were you when I opened my little metal box and my emergency savings was gone? Tyler's hand stayed on my shoulder. And he leaned in, speaking low, like this was just between us. I know this is a lot, he said, but we need to think clearly. Vincent had a big estate. There it was. The first crack in the mask. The first moment where Tyler's real reason slipped out. And suddenly, I wasn't in my living room anymore. I was back in that diner under harsh lights at 2 in the morning. Back when Tyler first turned into someone I didn't recognize. Back when he looked at me like my life was embarrassing. Back when he decided my love wasn't enough. And I realized something that made my stomach twist. This story didn't start today. It didn't start at Vincent's funeral. It didn't even start when Tyler vanished. It started years ago. Back when I was still fighting to survive, and my own son made me pay the price. Tyler's voice pulled me back. We're family, he said gently. We should handle this together. Family. That word hit me like a slap. Because family doesn't disappear. Family doesn't come back when the money is warm. I stepped away from his hand. Tyler frowned slightly, like I'd broken a rule he expected me to follow. Mom, he said a little sharper now, don't push me away, I'm trying. I laughed once. It wasn't funny, it was bitter. You're trying now, I said, after 15 years. Tyler's eyes hardened for half a second, then softened again. He was switching. I could see it. The way he'd flip from sweet to sharp depending on what worked. I made mistakes, he said. I was young. I stared at him. And all I could think was, Vincent would see through this. Vincent was a smart man. A careful man. A man who built his life with his own hands and didn't trust shiny words. And Tyler didn't know it yet. But Vincent had never been the kind of man you could play. Not with charm. Not with guilt. Not with a suit. Tyler took a slow breath, like he was calming himself. Look, he said, I know you're upset, but there are things we need to discuss. I felt the air change. Like a storm was walking into my house. Tyler tilted his head slightly. The will reading is in a few days, right? He asked. My skin went cold. How do you? He smiled again, too fast. I asked around, he said. It's normal, I want to be there. I stared at him, and my mind flashed forward to something I didn't understand yet. A conference room. A folder. A voice reading words that made Tyler's face go pale. A moment when the truth would slam into the room, like a door being kicked open. But right now, I didn't know any of that. Right now, all I knew was my husband was gone. And my son had returned like a shadow, at the worst possible time. Tyler's voice lowered again. Mom, he said, I need you to trust me. I looked at him. And for a second, my heart did something painful. Because trust used to be easy. I used to trust him with everything. I used to believe mothers and sons were unbreakable. But life taught me something Tyler never understood. Love doesn't survive everything. Some betrayals don't just hurt. They change who you are. I took a breath. And I asked him a question I already knew the answer to. Tyler, I said quietly, why are you really here? His eyes held mine. And for one tiny moment, I saw it. That flicker of truth. That little flash of hunger behind the polished face. Then he smiled. Because you're my mother, he said. But my body didn't believe him. Not anymore. And as I stood there in that living room, still grieving, still exhausted, still trying to breathe through the ache, one thought screamed louder than the rest. If Tyler came back now, he came back for a reason. And I was about to find out just how far my own son was willing to go, to take what he thought he deserved. But to understand how we got here, you need to go back with me. Back to the night the diner bell rang at 2 in the morning. Back to the moment my son walked in and asked me for money. Money he had already stolen. Because that was the night Tyler showed me who he really was. And it was only the beginning. The bell above the diner door had a tired sound. Not a cheerful ring, more like a worn-out cough. That's what happens when a place has been opened and closed 10,000 times by people who are running on empty. It was 2:00 a.m. on a Tuesday. And I was wiping the same sticky counter for the third time because if I stopped moving, I'd start feeling. And if I started feeling, I might not be able to keep going. The Roadhouse diner was quiet at that hour. A couple of truckers in the corner booth, one tired waitress in the kitchen humming to keep herself awake, the coffee pot bubbling like it was breathing. And me, Gloria Martinez, 50 years old, working a double shift that started at 6:00 p.m. the day before, with 4 hours still to go until my replacement showed up. My feet felt like they had bricks tied to them. My back ached like a warning. But the bills didn't care. The rent didn't care. And Tyler, my son, definitely didn't care. At least, that's what I believed back then. I'd been trying not to think about him too much. Trying not to stare at the empty chair at my kitchen table where he used to drop his backpack after school. Trying not to remember the way he used to laugh when he was little, before life hardened him into something sharp. But life has a cruel sense of timing. Because right when I was thinking, maybe it's been peaceful without him, the bell chimed. I looked up. And my heart did something strange. For half a second, it jumped, like it wanted to be happy. Then it sank. Because standing in the doorway wasn't a trucker. It wasn't a late-night drifter looking for pie. It was my son, Tyler. And he looked like he'd rather be anywhere else on Earth than inside the diner that kept the lights on in his childhood. His designer sneakers squeaked against the worn linoleum as he walked in. Designer. I noticed that right away. Because my son was living in a dump apartment, according to him. Yet somehow he had shoes that looked like they belonged in a music video. He walked up to the counter like the place offended him. Like the smell of frying oil and coffee had personally insulted him. And I did what mothers do. Even when we're tired. Even when we're hurt. Even when we're trying to protect ourselves. I smiled. Tyler, I said, forcing warmth into my voice. You're up late, honey. He didn't smile back. He sat down on the stool like it was a punishment. Mom, he said, we need to talk. That sentence always meant trouble. I poured him coffee without asking. After 25 years of being his mother, I knew he liked it black with 2 sugars. I slid it toward him and tried to keep my voice steady. Everything okay? Tyler ran his hands through his hair, same nervous habit he'd had since he was a kid. But this wasn't nervousness. This was calculation. Look, he said, leaning in slightly. I need to borrow some money, just temporarily. My stomach tightened immediately. Because I knew what was coming before he even said it. Tyler, I said carefully, you still owe me from last month, the car payment, remember? His jaw clenched. This is different. I kept my hands on the counter so he wouldn't see them shake. How is it different? He leaned closer, voice dropping like he was about to tell me a secret. It's an investment opportunity, he said. This guy I know, he's made crazy money with crypto, like insane money. I just need $3,000 to get started. I stopped wiping the counter. 3 grand. $3,000. To Tyler, it was a number he could throw around like loose change. To me, it was the thin line between survival and disaster. I stared at him. Tyler, I said slowly, I don't have that kind of money just lying around. He scoffed. What about your emergency fund? The way he said it. It wasn't a question. It was a statement. And my blood went cold. My eyes narrowed. How do you know about that? Tyler froze for a second. Just long enough. Then his face flushed red. I saw your bank statement, he said quickly. It was on the kitchen table. My throat tightened. That bank statement had been tucked under my grocery coupons. He didn't see it. He looked for it. He went through my things. I felt something shift inside me, but I tried to stay calm. That money is for emergencies, I said. Tyler rolled his eyes like I was being dramatic. Mom, you call everything an emergency. The rent, the car, the electric bill, that's not an emergency, that's just you living scared. I stared at him like he was speaking another language. Real emergencies, I said, are when you get sick, when the rent goes up, when, God forbid, I can't work. Tyler leaned back, disgust written all over his face. You want to be stuck like this forever, he snapped, gesturing around the diner, working in places like this until you die. Heat rose in my chest. Places like this put food on our table, I said. This place paid for your college before you dropped out. Tyler's eyes flashed. College was a waste of time, he said. Traditional education is dead, you have to think bigger. Bigger, I repeated, voice shaking now. Tyler, you've been thinking bigger for years while I work myself to the bone to keep us afloat. He leaned forward again. And the next words that came out of his mouth, I will never forget them. Because they weren't just cruel. They were personal. They were aimed straight at the part of me that was already broken. That's exactly the problem, he said coldly. You think small, you've always thought small. I stared at him. I wanted to tell him to stop. I wanted to tell him he didn't know what it felt like to carry a whole life on your back. But before I could speak, he said it. The sentence that changed something between us forever. No wonder Dad left, he muttered. It felt like someone punched me in the stomach. My vision blurred for a second. I gripped the counter so hard my knuckles went white. Don't you dare, I whispered. Tyler didn't stop. He looked at me like he enjoyed the pain he was causing. Why not, he said. It's true, isn't it? He got tired of your attitude, your acceptance of mediocrity, just like I am. My mouth opened, but no sound came out. Because the truth is, his father left because he couldn't handle responsibility. His father left because he didn't want to be a husband or a father when life got hard. But Tyler didn't want the truth. He wanted a weapon. And he found it. I took a shaky breath. Your father left because he was weak, I said quietly. Don't rewrite history to make yourself feel better. Tyler's face twisted. Handouts, he scoffed. That's all you ever think about, scraps, little bits, you act like we're supposed to be proud of struggling. I glanced toward the kitchen, hoping Joe, my manager, wouldn't walk out. Because the humiliation of having this fight in front of anyone would shattered me. I lowered my voice. I'm your mother, I said, and that money stays where it is. Tyler stood up so fast his stool scraped the floor. Fine, he snapped. I'll figure it out myself, I always do. He stormed toward the door. But then, because Tyler could never leave without one more knife twist, he turned back. His eyes narrowed. You know what your problem is, Mom, he said. I didn't answer. My throat was too tight. He leaned in, voice sharp and final. You're so afraid of losing what little you have that you can't see opportunities when they're right in front of you. He paused. Then he said it. The word that still echoes in my mind. You're pathetic. The bell clanged violently as he slammed the door behind him. And for a long moment, I just stood there under those harsh fluorescent lights. Frozen. The truckers in the corner booth stared, then looked away awkwardly like they hadn't seen anything. The coffee pot bubbled. The diner kept going like my world hadn't cracked open. I picked up Tyler's untouched coffee cup. My hands were shaking so bad I almost dropped it. And I told myself, he's angry, he's young, he'll calm down. Because that's what mothers do. We make excuses. We soften the truth so we can survive it. But the truth was already moving behind the scenes. Because Tyler didn't come to ask me for money. Not really. He came to check something. To confirm something. To see how far he could push me. And I didn't understand that until later. When I finally dragged myself home at 8:00 a.m., my legs felt like they belonged to someone else. I kicked off my shoes, barely even removed my uniform. And something in me whispered, check the box. I don't know why I thought it. Maybe instinct. Maybe fear. Maybe God warning me. I walked to my bedroom dresser. Pulled out the small metal box where I kept the emergency fund. My hands moved slowly, like I already knew what I would find. I opened it. And my heart stopped. Empty. I blinked. Once. Twice. Like my eyes were lying to me. But the box was empty. No cash. No envelope. No safety net. Just cold metal and silence. I sat down hard on the edge of the bed. And for a second, I couldn't breathe. I grabbed my phone with trembling fingers and called the bank. The hold music felt like torture. Finally, a representative picked up. Ma'am, I can confirm a withdrawal of $3,000, she said, voice polite, like she was reading the weather. My mouth went dry. When? I whispered. Yesterday at 3:00 p.m. 3 in the afternoon. While I was at work. While I was wiping counters and pouring coffee and trying to survive. Someone had taken my debit card and drained my savings. Someone who knew my PIN. Someone who knew where I kept the statement. Someone who knew everything. My hands went numb. I didn't want to say his name. Because saying it would make it real. But it was real. Tyler. My phone buzzed. A text message. From Tyler. I stared at the screen for a long moment before opening it. Then I read the words that made my stomach twist into a knot. Mom, I'm sorry it had to be this way, but you would never have understood. My breath caught. Another message popped up right after. This investment is going to change everything. I'll pay you back triple when it pays off, trust me. Then a final one. P.S. I'm leaving town for a while. Don't try to find me. I need space to figure things out without your negativity dragging me down. Maybe someday you'll thank me for having the courage to think bigger. I read those messages 3 times. And with each read, the truth became heavier. My son didn't ask for money. He stole it. And then he came to the diner to watch my face. To test me. To hurt me. To make me feel small enough that I wouldn't fight back. I stumbled out of my bedroom and went down the hall to Tyler's room. My hands shook as I pushed the door open. The room was mostly empty. Clothes gone. Computer gone. All the expensive things he'd somehow acquired over the past year. Gone. On the pillow sat a handwritten note. I unfolded it with fingers that didn't feel like mine. Mom, I know you're probably mad, but someday you'll understand. I can't stay in this small-minded place anymore. You raised me to accept scraps, but I want more than that. Don't contact me until you're ready to support my dreams instead of crushing them. And then the final line, like a final kick while I was already down. Your emergency fund was never really an emergency fund anyway. You were just scared to live. At least now it's doing something important. I crumpled the note, threw it across the room, and then I sat on his bed and cried harder than I had since his father walked out on us. Because there are pains in life you expect. A husband leaving. A job firing you. A bill you can't pay. But your own child stealing from you. Your own child blaming you for his betrayal. That kind of pain isn't just sadness. It's something else. It's grief mixed with shame. It's heartbreak mixed with anger. It's the moment you realize love doesn't always protect you. Sometimes love makes you vulnerable. And Tyler knew that. In the days that followed, my life didn't just get harder. It started collapsing. Rent came due. Then the electric bill. Then the car insurance. And without that emergency fund, every small problem became a crisis, the real kind. My landlord gave me 2 weeks. My manager started watching me like I was unreliable. My body started breaking from exhaustion. And worst of all, I started doubting myself. Because Tyler's words crawled into my brain at night. You think small. You're pathetic. No wonder Dad left. I was drowning. And Tyler was gone. But here, what Tyler didn't understand back then. When you push someone to the edge long enough, you don't just break them. Sometimes, you build something inside them. Something harder. Something quieter. Something that remembers. And one day, when Tyler walked back into my life with that expensive suit, he thought I would be the same woman from the diner. Still tired. Still scared. Still easy to guilt. But what happened after he left me with nothing changed me forever. And that change, it's the reason Tyler didn't win in the end. Because you can steal money. You can steal peace. You can steal years. But you can't steal what someone becomes after they survive you. And that's where the real story begins. Because after Tyler vanished, that was when I met Vincent Romano. And that was when my life started turning into something Tyler never saw coming. 3 months. That's how long it took for the tears to slow down. Not stop. Just slow enough that I could function again. By then, my life had settled into something small and tight, like a room you learn to live in because you have no choice. I'd lost the apartment. Moved into a tiny studio across town, with walls so thin I could hear my neighbors arguing about groceries, and rent at 2 in the morning. I took a third job cleaning office buildings at night. Diner in the morning. Cleaning at night. Sleep in between, if I was lucky. Every day felt like running on fumes. Every night felt like a quiet kind of grief. And Tyler. He was gone. No calls. No texts. No apology. Just silence. I told myself I didn't care. But the truth was, I thought about him every day. Not because I missed him, but because his absence left questions that never stopped echoing. What did I do wrong? Was I really too small-minded? Did loving him too much break him? Those thoughts followed me into the diner like ghosts. Until one evening, someone noticed me. He sat in the corner booth by the window. Always the same booth. Always the same order. Coffee. Wheat toast. Scrambled eggs. He didn't rush. Didn't stare at his phone. Didn't snap his fingers or call me sweetheart, like some of the men did. He waited. And when I brought his plate, he looked up. Really looked. Not through me. At me. You work too hard, he said one night, his voice calm but certain. I laughed out of habit. Bills don't pay themselves. He smiled softly. No, he said, but people break when they try to pay them alone. I froze. Because no one had said that to me before. Not like that. Not without judgment. Vincent Romano, he said, holding out his hand. Nice to finally meet you. I hesitated, then shook it. His grip was firm. Calloused. The hands of someone who'd worked for a living. Gloria Martinez, I said, and I don't think we've met before. He chuckled. I've been coming here twice a week for almost 2 months. You just never noticed. I felt embarrassed. I'm sorry, I said. My mind's usually somewhere else. I know, he replied gently. That's why I noticed you. That should scared me. But it didn't. It felt grounding. Vincent kept coming back. Tuesday nights. Thursday mornings. Same booth. Same order. Sometimes we talked. Sometimes we didn't. But when we did, it felt easy. Natural. Like talking to someone who wasn't trying to take anything from me. One night during a lull he asked, "You have kids?" The question hit me like a bruise. I swallowed. I have a son. His eyes softened. Have, he repeated quietly. He's grown, I said, living his own life. Vincent nodded. My wife and I tried for kids, he said. Never happened. I waited for bitterness. But there wasn't any. Just acceptance. Cancer took her 2 years ago, he added. I didn't know what to say. So I told the truth. I'm sorry. He smiled sadly. She'd hate that I'm eating diner eggs instead of cooking her pasta, he said, but she always said I needed to get out more. That night, when he left, he placed a $50 bill on the table. For a $12 meal. I chased him to the door. Sir, I said, you don't have to. He turned back. I know, he said, I want to. Then he paused. And Gloria, you matter more than you think. That sentence followed me home. It sat with me while I scrubbed office floors. While I counted change. While I lay awake listening to strangers fight through thin walls. You matter more than you think. I hadn't heard words like that in years. A week later, my car broke down. Again. I was stranded behind the diner after a double shift, staring at smoke coming out from under the hood, fighting the urge to cry. Vincent happened to walk out at the same time. What happened? He asked. I shrugged. Car decided it's done with me. He looked under the hood for 2 seconds, then shook his head. You're not going anywhere tonight. I'll call a tow, I said quickly. I don't want to. You don't want to what? He asked gently. Accept help. I didn't answer. He already knew. Vincent paid for the tow. Paid for the repairs. When I protested, he waved me off. Friends help friends, he said, and I'd like to be your friend, Gloria. That word friend felt heavier than it should. Because I wasn't used to kindness that didn't come with guilt. Or expectation. Or a bill later. We started talking more. About work. About life. About the things we lost. I told him about Tyler. Not all of it. Just enough. Vincent listened, without interrupting, without fixing, without blaming. When I finished, he was quiet for a long moment. Then he said something that changed how I saw myself. Some people don't deserve the love they're given, he said. That doesn't mean the love was wrong. I blinked. No one had ever said that to me before. We stayed talking past closing that night. Joe locked the door and joked that I was keeping the place open just for my boyfriend. I laughed. Too fast. Vincent just smiled. But later, walking to my car, my heart felt different. Lighter. 6 months passed like that. Small kindnesses. Shared stories. Coffee that tasted better because someone cared enough to ask how my day was. Then one evening, after the diner emptied out, Vincent stayed behind. He looked nervous. I'd never seen him nervous. Gloria, he said, I need to tell you something. My stomach dropped. This was it, I thought. The catch. The moment he asks for something in return. I'm falling in love with you, he said. Just like that. No drama. No pressure. I know I'm older, set in my ways, probably not what you imagine for yourself, and I'm not asking for an answer tonight. He took a breath. I just needed you to know you deserve real love, the kind that doesn't hurt. I didn't cry. I didn't run. I just stood there stunned. Because no one had ever said that to me and meant it. That night, I went home and looked at myself in the mirror. Really looked. I saw a woman who'd been abandoned. Used. Belittled. But still standing. Still capable of love. And for the first time since Tyler left, I wondered if maybe my life wasn't over. 3 weeks later, I said yes. Not to marriage. Not to forever. Just to trying. And that decision, that quiet, terrifying decision, was the first step toward the life Tyler never saw coming. Because loving Vincent taught me something important. Something Tyler never learned. Love isn't about taking. It's about choosing. And Vincent chose me. Every single day. Saying yes to Vincent didn't feel like fireworks. It felt like stepping onto thin ice. Careful, quiet, terrifying. Because when you've been hurt by the people who were supposed to love you, happiness doesn't feel safe. It feels temporary, like something you're borrowing. So when Vincent asked me out to dinner, a real dinner, not the diner, I almost said no. Not because I didn't want to go, but because I didn't believe I belonged there. He picked me up on a Friday night in a clean, well-kept truck that smelled faintly of leather and coffee. He wore a simple jacket, nothing flashy. I wore my one good black dress, the one I'd bought years ago for job interviews and funerals. I kept smoothing it down like it might disappear if I didn't keep reminding it I needed it. You look beautiful, Vincent said when I opened the door. And for once, I didn't argue. The restaurant had candles on the tables and music so soft it felt like a secret. I kept worrying I'd do something wrong. Use the wrong fork. Say the wrong thing. Vincent noticed. Relax, he said, smiling. The food doesn't care who you are. I laughed, really laughed, and something inside me loosened. Over dinner, he told me his story. How he grew up poor in Fresno. How he started working construction at 16. How he saved every dollar until he could buy a used pickup and a toolbox. How he and his wife, Maria, lived in a trailer on job sites for years just to keep their company alive. We worked 18-hour days, he said, thought we were crazy. Was it worth it? I asked. He smiled sadly. The business, yes, the money, maybe, but the real dream was retiring together, traveling, slowing down. He paused. Cancer doesn't care about plans. I reached across the table without thinking and squeezed his hand. I'm glad you didn't give up, I said. On life, I mean. He looked at me like I'd given him something precious. Me too, he said. From that night on, life started changing in ways that felt unreal. Vincent didn't rush me, didn't try to impress me with money, didn't talk down to me or fix me. He showed up. Flowers at the diner. Notes tucked under my windshield wiper. Picnics at the park on my days off. When I told him I was uncomfortable with expensive things, he listened. When I told him I was scared, he waited. 6 months later, he took me to his house for the first time. I remember stopping at the front door, my heart pounding. The house sat on 5 acres outside Bakersfield. A wide ranch-style home. 3-car garage. A pool that looked like something out of a magazine. This is too much, I whispered. It's just a house, he said gently, and it's been empty too long. Inside, everything felt quiet. Too quiet. Photos lined the walls, him and Maria over 40 years of marriage, young and hopeful, then older and proud. Her sewing room still untouched. Her garden overgrown. I'm not trying to replace her, I said quickly. I know, Vincent replied, and I'm not trying to replace your son. That stopped me. We both loved people who couldn't love us back the way we deserved, he said. That doesn't mean we stopped deserving love. A year later, Vincent proposed. Not with a crowd. Not with a ring in a champagne glass. But on a Tuesday night at the diner, after my shift. Marry me, Gloria, he said quietly. Let's build something together. I panicked. I don't have anything to bring, I said. No money, no property. You have you, he said. That's everything. We married at the courthouse. No fancy guests. Just us. And 2 witnesses. It was perfect. Moving into Vincent's house felt like stepping into someone else's life. I kept expecting someone to tell me I didn't belong. I hung my diner uniforms next to his suits. Learned how to use appliances I'd never touched. Every time I apologized for being overwhelmed, Vincent smiled. It's our house now, he'd say. I quit the night cleaning job first. Then the diner. For the first time in decades, I slept through the night. I learned how to breathe again. We traveled. Italy. Ireland. Mexico. Vincent treated every trip like a gift. Not a flex. A gift. He looked at me every morning like he couldn't believe I was real. For 5 years, I felt safe. And I forgot something important. Peace has a way of making you forget who hurt you. I thought about Tyler sometimes. Wondered where he was. If he was okay. Vincent warned me gently. People who leave often come back when they want something. I should listened. Because one Tuesday morning in March, everything shattered. Vincent collapsed at the breakfast table. 1 minute, he was complaining about traffic. The next, he was on the floor. The stroke was massive. The doctors were careful with their words. Even if he survives, they said, there may be cognitive damage. I didn't leave his side. For 3 days. Then 4. When he woke up, he was confused. Some days he knew me. Some days he asked for Maria. Some days he thought he still owned the construction company. I brought him home. Hired nurses. Turned our house into a hospital. And that's when the doorbell rang. And Tyler came back. Dressed in confidence. Smelling like money. Looking at my life like it was something he could finally afford. The doorbell rang just after noon. I remember the time because I'd just finished blending Vincent's lunch, soup, thinned down so he could swallow it safely. The nurse was upstairs helping him change, and for a moment, The house was quiet in that strange way it gets when life is holding its breath. I wiped my hands on a towel and walked toward the door, already exhausted. I wasn't expecting anyone. When I opened it, my heart dropped straight into my stomach. Tyler stood on the porch. Not the boy who slammed a diner door and vanished. Not the broke young man who stole my emergency fund. This Tyler looked polished. Expensive suit. Perfect haircut. Confident posture. He looked like someone who had learned how to win. "Hi, Mom," he said softly. For a second, I couldn't speak. 10 years. 10 years without a call, a card, a message. And now he was here, standing in front of my house like he'd never left. "How did you?" I began. "I heard about Vincent," he said quickly. "I came as soon as I could." My throat tightened. "How did you hear?" Tyler hesitated. "Just a fraction. I kept tabs, made sure you were okay." That didn't comfort me. It chilled me. Because I hadn't been okay for years, and he hadn't cared then. "You look good, Mom," he added, glancing past me into the house. I stepped outside and closed the door behind me. Instinct. Protection. "Why are you here, Tyler?" I asked. His face softened. The same practiced softness I remembered from childhood whenever he wanted something. "I want to help," he said. "You shouldn't be doing this alone." Against my better judgment, I let him in. Vincent was awake when we went upstairs, staring out the window at Maria's garden. The nurse smiled politely and stepped aside. "Vincent," I said gently, "this is my son, Tyler." Vincent blinked. "My wife has a son?" he asked, confused. Tyler didn't flinch. He took Vincent's hand like a professional. "Nice to meet you, sir. I'm sorry we're meeting like this." For an hour, Tyler played the role perfectly. Patient. Kind. Attentive. He listened to Vincent's rambling stories, laughed at the right moments, even helped the nurse adjust his pillow. When we stepped out of the room, Tyler sighed. "He's a good man," he said. "You're lucky." "I know," I replied. That night, Tyler offered to stay. To help with the nurses. To give me rest. And I wanted to believe him. God help me, I wanted to believe my son had changed. For 3 weeks, Tyler was everything I needed. He coordinated doctor visits, researched treatments, sat with Vincent so I could sleep. People told me how lucky I was to have such a devoted son. And I started thinking, maybe I'd been wrong. Maybe people really could change. Then Vincent died. 3 weeks after Tyler arrived. I held Vincent's hand as he took his last breath. Tyler stood at the foot of the bed. Vincent whispered something before he went. "Don't trust." He never finished the sentence. I told myself Vincent meant trust yourself. I needed to believe that. The funeral was beautiful. The church was packed. Tyler sat beside me, holding my hand. Everyone said how strong I was. How lucky I was to have my son. And for one fragile moment, I believed it too. Until I overheard Tyler on the phone. "The will reading is Monday," he said quietly. "My attorney will be there." My blood went cold. That night, Tyler finally said it out loud. "Vincent was worth millions," he said. "As your son, I have rights." Rights? To a man he'd known 3 weeks. I looked at my son and saw the truth clearly. He hadn't come back for me. He'd come back for money. And he thought I was too tired, too emotional, too grateful to stop him. He was wrong. The doorbell rang just after noon. I remember the time because I'd just finished blending Vincent's lunch, soup, thinned down so he could swallow it safely. The nurse was upstairs helping him change, and for a moment, The house was quiet in that strange way it gets when life is holding its breath. I wiped my hands on a towel and walked toward the door, already exhausted. I wasn't expecting anyone. When I opened it, my heart dropped straight into my stomach. Tyler stood on the porch. Not the boy who slammed a diner door and vanished. Not the broke young man who stole my emergency fund. This Tyler looked polished. Expensive suit. Perfect haircut. Confident posture. He looked like someone who had learned how to win. "Hi, Mom," he said softly. For a second, I couldn't speak. 10 years. 10 years without a call, a card, a message. And now he was here, standing in front of my house like he'd never left. "How did you?" I began. "I heard about Vincent," he said quickly. "I came as soon as I could." My throat tightened. "How did you hear?" Tyler hesitated. "Just a fraction. I kept tabs, made sure you were okay." That didn't comfort me. It chilled me. Because I hadn't been okay for years, and he hadn't cared then. "You look good, Mom," he added, glancing past me into the house. I stepped outside and closed the door behind me. Instinct. Protection. "Why are you here, Tyler?" I asked. His face softened. The same practiced softness I remembered from childhood whenever he wanted something. "I want to help," he said. "You shouldn't be doing this alone." Against my better judgment, I let him in. Vincent was awake when we went upstairs, staring out the window at Maria's garden. The nurse smiled politely and stepped aside. "Vincent," I said gently, "this is my son, Tyler." Vincent blinked. "My wife has a son?" he asked, confused. Tyler didn't flinch. He took Vincent's hand like a professional. "Nice to meet you, sir. I'm sorry we're meeting like this." For an hour, Tyler played the role perfectly. Patient. Kind. Attentive. He listened to Vincent's rambling stories, laughed at the right moments, even helped the nurse adjust his pillow. When we stepped out of the room, Tyler sighed. "He's a good man," he said. "You're lucky." "I know," I replied. That night, Tyler offered to stay. To help with the nurses. To give me rest. And I wanted to believe him. God help me, I wanted to believe my son had changed. For 3 weeks, Tyler was everything I needed. He coordinated doctor visits, researched treatments, sat with Vincent so I could sleep. People told me how lucky I was to have such a devoted son. And I started thinking, maybe I'd been wrong. Maybe people really could change. Then Vincent died. 3 weeks after Tyler arrived. I held Vincent's hand as he took his last breath. Tyler stood at the foot of the bed. Vincent whispered something before he went. "Don't trust." He never finished the sentence. I told myself Vincent meant trust yourself. I needed to believe that. The funeral was beautiful. The church was packed. Tyler sat beside me, holding my hand. Everyone said how strong I was. How lucky I was to have my son. And for one fragile moment, I believed it too. Until I overheard Tyler on the phone. "The will reading is Monday," he said quietly. "My attorney will be there." My blood went cold. That night, Tyler finally said it out loud. "Vincent was worth millions," he said. "As your son, I have rights." Rights? To a man he'd known 3 weeks. I looked at my son and saw the truth clearly. He hadn't come back for me. He'd come back for money. And he thought I was too tired, too emotional, too grateful to stop him. He was wrong. The house felt different after the funeral. Quieter. Not peaceful quiet, heavy quiet. The kind that presses on your chest and reminds you someone important is missing from every room. Tyler stayed. He said it made sense. Family should be together during times like this, he told me. And against every instinct I had, I let him. Because grief makes you weak in ways you don't expect. It makes you reach for familiar shapes, even when they've cut you before. For a few days after the funeral, Tyler was careful. Too careful. He brought me tea without asking. Told me to rest. Handled phone calls from people I didn't know. He kept saying things like, "You don't need to worry about that, and I'll take care of it." At first, it felt like help. Then it started to feel like control. One evening, I walked into Vincent's office. Tyler was sitting at Vincent's desk, using Vincent's computer. Papers spread out in front of him. Financial papers. I stopped in the doorway. "What are you doing?" I asked. Tyler didn't even look guilty. "I'm organizing things," he said calmly. "There's a lot here, Mom. Investments, accounts, properties. You shouldn't have to deal with this alone." "I didn't ask you to," I said. He finally looked up. "I know," he replied, "but you need me." That sentence sat wrong in my chest. "I have Frank," I said, "Vincent's lawyer." Tyler smiled. A tight smile. "Frank works for the estate," he said. "I work for you." That night I couldn't sleep. Something in me kept replaying Vincent's last words. Don't trust. Don't trust who? The next morning I called Frank. He answered on the second ring. "Gloria," he said gently, "how are you holding up?" "I need to ask you something," I said, "and I need you to be honest." Frank was quiet for a moment. "Of course." "Did Vincent ever talk to you about my son?" The silence on the line stretched. "Yes," Frank said carefully, "he did." My heart started pounding. "When?" "In the last few weeks," Frank replied, "more than once." I closed my eyes. "What did he say?" Frank exhaled slowly. "He said he was concerned." That word, concerned, hit me harder than anger would have. "Concerned about what?" I whispered. "About Tyler's interest in the estate," Frank said. "About the questions he was asking, about the calls he was making." My stomach dropped. "He noticed?" I asked. "Yes," Frank said. "Vincent noticed everything." I leaned against the kitchen counter to keep from falling. "There's more," Frank added. "Vincent asked me to come by the house tomorrow morning, before the will reading." "For what?" I asked. "To make sure you're protected," he said. That night I watched Tyler closely. The way he paced while on his phone. The way he lowered his voice. The way he smiled when he thought I wasn't looking. And suddenly, everything made sense. His timing. His patience. His sudden kindness. It wasn't love. It was strategy. Vincent died on a Thursday night. By Friday morning, Tyler was already planning his next move. The will reading was scheduled for Monday. Frank arrived early. Tyler arrived with an attorney. A sharp-looking woman with cold eyes and a briefcase that looked heavy with confidence. They sat across from me like we were strangers. Before Frank even opened the will, Tyler spoke. "As Gloria's son," he said smoothly, "I believe I have legal standing here." Frank didn't react. He simply nodded and opened a folder. "Before we proceed," Frank said, "there is an additional document." Tyler frowned. "What document?" "A codicil," Frank replied, "added 1 week before Vincent's death." Tyler's face went pale. Frank began reading. "Regarding Tyler Martinez," he said aloud, "son of my beloved wife Gloria." Tyler sat up. "I have observed this young man closely during his stay in my home." Tyler's attorney shifted in her chair. While he presents himself as seeking reconciliation, Frank continued, his true motives have become clear to me. Tyler stood. This is ridiculous. Sit down, his attorney hissed. Frank didn't stop. He has asked detailed questions about my assets, researched inheritance law on my computer, and made phone calls to attorneys while believing I was unaware. The room was silent. He is not here out of love, Frank read, but as a predator seeking to exploit grief for personal gain. I felt tears run down my face, not from sadness. From relief. Frank looked directly at Tyler. I therefore explicitly disinherit Tyler Martinez from any claim to my estate. Tyler's mouth opened. No sound came out. And, Frank continued, should any contest be attempted, all assets will be transferred to charity. Tyler exploded. That's impossible, he wasn't competent. Frank pressed a button on his laptop. Tyler's own voice filled the room. I just need to play the devoted son until he dies. The color drained from Tyler's face. His attorney stood. I'm withdrawing from this case, she said, immediately. Tyler turned to me. Mom, he said desperately, you can't let this happen. I stood up. Family doesn't steal. Family doesn't pretend. Family doesn't wait for death to show up. You're not my family, I said quietly. The room went still. 6 months later, I stood at a college podium. The Vincent and Maria Romano Scholarship Fund had its first recipients. Young people with calloused hands and honest dreams. Vincent's legacy lived on. Tyler tried to disappear again. This time, I let him. Because the truth Vincent left behind wasn't just protection. It was freedom. And for the first time in my life, I chose myself. The weeks after the will reading felt unreal. Like I was walking through someone else's life. The house was quiet again, but this time it wasn't heavy. It was clean. Tyler left that same afternoon. He didn't slam the door. He didn't yell. He didn't even argue much after Frank shut everything down. He just grabbed his coat, avoided my eyes, and walked out like a man who had lost a bad bet. I watched him go from the front window. And I felt nothing. No rage. No triumph. No guilt. Just a strange sense of finality. Like a book closing. Frank stayed behind for a while. He made sure I was okay, explained the next steps, reassured me that Tyler had no legal ground left. Vincent had been thorough, almost painfully so. He loved you very much, Frank said quietly before he left. Everything he did to protect you. After Frank was gone, I walked through the house alone. Vincent's house. My house. I stopped in every room. The kitchen, where he used to make coffee too strong and smile like it was a crime. The living room, where we watched old movies and argued over the ending. The office where he worked late, believing in plans and people and careful thinking. And finally, the bedroom. I sat on the edge of the bed and allowed myself to cry, not the sharp, broken crying from before, but the deep, steady kind that comes after something important has ended. I missed him. God, I missed him. But mixed with the grief was something else. Gratitude. Because Vincent didn't just love me while he was alive. He loved me enough to protect me after he was gone. In the months that followed, I made choices Tyler never expected me to make. I didn't sell the house. But I didn't keep it frozen in time either. I packed away some of Vincent's expensive things and donated them. Suits, watches, furniture we never really used. I kept what mattered. His old pickup truck. Maria's garden tools. The photographs. I learned how to tend the garden properly. Every morning, I watered the plants, pulled weeds, talked to Maria like she might be listening. It felt right. The scholarship fund became my purpose. 12 students that first year, all from families like mine had been, working class, tired, determined. When I stood in front of them at the opening ceremony, my hands trembled. Not from fear. From pride. These scholarships aren't charity, I told them. They're trust. Someone believed you could build something meaningful. Now it's your turn. After the ceremony, a young woman named Isabella hugged me. This changed my life, she whispered. And in that moment, I understood something important. Vincent's legacy wasn't the money. It was the belief. Tyler never contacted me again. Frank told me he tried to find other lawyers. None would touch the case. Eventually, Tyler disappeared, just like before. And this time, I didn't chase him. I didn't wonder. I didn't blame myself. Because here's the truth I learned the hard way. Loving someone doesn't mean sacrificing yourself forever. Family isn't defined by blood. It's defined by behavior. By showing up. By protecting, not taking. By loving without conditions. For years, I thought being a good mother meant enduring everything. Excusing everything. Forgiving everything. But real love has boundaries. And the day I told Tyler to leave my house, that wasn't cruelty. That was survival. Sometimes the bravest thing you can do is stop hoping someone will become who they never intended to be. I still drive past the diner sometimes. Joe waves. We smile. I'm not that woman anymore. But I don't forget her either. She kept going when everything fell apart. She survived betrayal. She stayed kind without staying weak. And if there's one thing I want you to take from my story, it's this. The best revenge isn't punishment. It isn't anger. It isn't watching someone fall. The best revenge is building a life so full, so peaceful, so strong, that the people who tried to use you no longer matter. Losing the wrong people can be the greatest gift of all. And choosing yourself. That's where healing begins. People think the hardest part is the betrayal. It is. The hardest part is what comes after. When the noise stops. When the anger fades. When no one is watching anymore. That's when you're left alone with yourself. After Tyler disappeared for the second time, life didn't magically become perfect. There was no dramatic victory music, no applause, no sudden sense that everything was fixed. There was just quiet. At first, that quiet scared me. I'd spent most of my life reacting. To bills. To work schedules. To Tyler's moods. To Vincent's illness. To emergencies that never seemed to end. Now there was space. And space can feel dangerous when you're not used to it. The first few weeks, I kept busy on purpose. I reorganized closets that didn't need organizing, cleaned rooms that were already clean, found reasons to leave the house even when there was nowhere I needed to be. I was afraid that if I stopped moving, the grief would catch me. But one afternoon, while I was tending Maria's garden, something shifted. I was on my knees, dirt under my fingernails, sun warming my back. I was talking out loud, telling Maria about the weeds that wouldn't die and the tomatoes that were finally coming in. And suddenly I laughed. Just a small laugh. It surprised me. Because it was the first time I'd laughed without guilt. For years, happiness felt like something I wasn't allowed to have. Like if I enjoyed my life too much, something bad would come along and punish me for it. But that afternoon, standing in the garden, I realized something simple and powerful. I was safe. Not because nothing bad could ever happen again. But because I trusted myself now. I trusted that I could handle whatever came next. That was new. I started volunteering more at the college, helping students apply for internships, listening to their worries about money and family and whether they were good enough. I saw so much of myself in them. And sometimes, when they thanked me, I wanted to tell them the truth. That Vincent wasn't the only one who gave them something. They gave me something too. They reminded me that building a life isn't about proving anything to anyone. It's about consistency, effort, integrity. Everything Tyler wanted without understanding. Every now and then, someone would ask about my son. They'd phrase it carefully, like they were walking on glass. "How Tyler doing these days?" And I'd smile politely and say, "We're not in touch." That was all. I didn't owe anyone the full story. That was another lesson I learned. You don't have to explain your boundaries to people who never respected them. Late one evening, about a year after Vincent passed, I found an old voicemail on my phone. It was from a number I didn't recognize. I almost deleted it without listening. But something stopped me. It was Tyler. His voice sounded different. Not confident. Not sharp. Just tired. "Mom," he said quietly, "I don't know if you'll ever hear this. I just wanted to say I know I messed things up. I thought being smart meant winning. Turns out I lost more than I realized." He paused. "I won't bother you again, I just hope you're okay." The message ended. I sat there for a long time with the phone in my hand. And then I did something that surprised even me. I deleted it. Not out of anger. Not out of revenge. But because I didn't need it. I didn't need closure from him anymore. I had already closed that chapter myself. Forgiveness, I learned, doesn't always mean reconciliation. Sometimes forgiveness just means letting go. As the years passed, my life settled into a rhythm that felt honest. Mornings in the garden. Afternoons at the college. Evenings with books, music, quiet dinners. I hosted small gatherings, students, neighbors, a few friends I'd made later in life. People who knew me as I was now, not as who I used to be. Sometimes, I'd catch myself thinking about the woman I was back at the diner. The one wiping counters at 2:00 a.m., believing her best years were behind her. If I could speak to her now, I'd tell her this. You don't get weaker with age. You get clearer. You stop chasing approval. You stop shrinking yourself to keep others comfortable. You stop confusing endurance with love. I used to think justice meant someone else losing. Now I know better. Justice is peace. Justice is safety. Justice is waking up without dread. Vincent gave me love. Tyler gave me a lesson. And both shaped the woman I became. Some nights, I sit on the porch with a cup of tea and watch the sun go down over the land Vincent worked so hard to build. I don't feel lonely. I feel complete. Because I finally understand something that took me most of my life to learn. You don't owe anyone access to your life just because they share your blood. You owe yourself honesty. You owe yourself protection. You owe yourself a future that isn't built on fear. And when you choose that, when you choose yourself, everything changes. This isn't a story about revenge. It's a story about waking up. About seeing clearly. About realizing that the best chapters don't belong to the young, the rich, or the lucky. They belong to the brave. And that's something no one can ever take from me again. About 2 years after everything settled. After the lawyers stopped calling. After the scholarship fund found its footing. After my life finally felt like my own. I found myself sitting at Vincent's old desk, with a blank sheet of paper in front of me. I hadn't planned to write anything. It just happened. The house was quiet, the late afternoon sun slanting through the window, dust floating in the air like tiny memories. Maria's garden was visible outside, greener than it had ever been. I could hear birds, wind, life moving gently forward. And suddenly, I felt the urge to write a letter. Not to Vincent. Not to Maria. But to Tyler. I picked up the pen and stared at the paper for a long time. Because for the first time, I wasn't angry enough to accuse him. And I wasn't desperate enough to beg him either. I just wanted to speak my truth. So I started writing. Tyler, I don't know if you'd read this if I sent it, and I don't know if it would change anything, but I'm writing it anyway because I finally understand what I needed to say. I used to believe being your mother meant enduring everything. Your anger, your disappointment, your silence. I thought love was something you proved by suffering quietly. I was wrong. I paused there, my hand shaking slightly. Because admitting that still hurt. When you left the first time, I blamed myself. When you stole from me, I blamed myself. When you came back only for money, I still wondered what I had done to deserve it. But I see it clearly now. Your choices were yours. And mine are mine. I leaned back in the chair and took a breath. The woman writing this letter wasn't the woman who worked double shifts at the diner. She wasn't the woman who cried herself to sleep in a tiny apartment. She wasn't even the woman who begged herself to believe Tyler had changed. She was someone else now. Someone steadier. I hope one day you understand that winning isn't the same as building. That money doesn't replace trust. And that intelligence without empathy eventually leaves you alone. I hope you learn that before it's too late. I stopped writing. The pen hovered over the page. And suddenly, I realized something important. This letter wasn't for Tyler. It was for me. I folded the paper and placed it in the drawer without sealing it. I never sent it. And I never would. Because closure doesn't always come from conversation. Sometimes it comes from clarity. As the years passed, my life kept expanding in small, meaningful ways. The scholarship program doubled in size. Students graduated. Some came back with jobs and families of their own. They'd bring their parents to meet me, tired mothers and fathers with proud eyes, hands worn from work. They'd thank me like I'd saved their lives. But the truth was they saved mine too. They reminded me that cycles can be broken. That hardship doesn't have to repeat itself. That love, when given wisely, multiplies instead of disappearing. One afternoon, a fellow volunteer asked me something that caught me off guard. "Do you ever regret not having children with Vincent?" she asked gently. I thought about it for a long moment. "No," I said finally, "because Vincent and I built something that helped a lot of children." That answer surprised me. But it felt true. Sometimes life gives you a different version of family than you expected. And sometimes, that version is exactly what you needed. Every now and then, I'd hear small updates about Tyler through Frank. Nothing detailed. Just fragments. A failed business deal. A move to another state. A short-lived partnership. Tyler was always chasing the next big thing. Always convinced the next move would finally prove something. I stopped asking questions. Because knowing wasn't necessary anymore. I didn't wish him harm. But I also didn't wish him back. That distinction mattered. One evening, while sorting old photos, I found a picture of Tyler as a child. He was maybe 6 years old, missing a front tooth, holding a toy truck, smiling like the world was safe. I sat with that picture for a long time. Not in grief. Not in guilt. But in acceptance. That child wasn't my enemy. But he wasn't my responsibility anymore either. I placed the photo back in the box and closed the lid. That was my goodbye. The final, quiet kind. The kind no one sees. The kind that doesn't need witnesses. On the anniversary of Vincent's death, I visit the garden and leave fresh flowers near Maria's old bench. I talk out loud, tell him about the students, the house, the small joys. Sometimes I imagine what he'd say. He'd smile. He'd tell me I did well. And I believe him. If there's one thing this life taught me, it's this. You can love someone deeply and still choose to walk away. You can forgive and still protect yourself. You can lose people you thought you needed and discover you were stronger than you ever knew. That letter I never sent. It sits quietly in the drawer, not as a reminder of pain, but as proof that I survived it. And that survival, that quiet, steady survival, was the greatest victory of all. I used to think the end of a story had to be loud. A confrontation. A victory. Someone walking away defeated. That's what movies teach us. But real life doesn't work that way. Real endings are quiet. They sound like mornings without anxiety. Like evenings without dread. Like breathing without bracing yourself for the next disappointment. Years have passed since the day Tyler walked out of Frank's office for the last time. And if I'm honest, nothing dramatic happened after that. No sudden fortune. No perfect peace overnight. Just life, steady, honest, and finally mine. I wake up early most mornings, not because I have to, but because I want to. I make coffee the way Vincent liked it, even though I drink it lighter. Old habits stay with you when they're tied to love. I walk through the garden, checking the soil, trimming leaves, watching things grow at their own pace. That garden taught me something Tyler never understood. Growth can't be forced. You can't cheat it. You can't steal it. It comes from patience, care, and time. The house still feels big sometimes, but it doesn't feel empty. It feels full of memory, and memory, when it's no longer painful, is a gift. I host students for dinner a few times a year. They sit around my table laughing, talking about exams and dreams and the fear of failing. I see their parents in them. I see myself. When they ask how I ended up here, I tell them the truth, but not all of it. I tell them life is long. I tell them mistakes don't disqualify you. I tell them that who you become after hardship matters more than what you lost. I don't talk much about Tyler anymore. Not because it still hurts, but because it no longer defines me. That was another lesson. Pain feels permanent while you're inside it. But nothing stays sharp forever. Even the deepest wounds eventually turn into scars, and scars don't hurt. They just remind you that you lived. Sometimes people ask me if I'd do anything differently. If I could go back, would I have been stricter with Tyler? Would I have protected myself sooner? Would I have walked away earlier? The truth is, I don't know. I did the best I could with what I knew at the time. And I forgive that version of myself. She was tired. She was scared. She loved fiercely, even when it cost her. That doesn't make her weak. That makes her human. What I know now is this. Love without boundaries isn't love. It's sacrifice without safety. And no one, child or spouse or parent, has the right to take your life piece by piece and call it family. Family doesn't arrive when there's something to gain. Family doesn't measure affection in dollars. Family doesn't wait for death to show up with open hands. Family protects. Family stays. Family doesn't make you smaller. For a long time, I believed my purpose was to hold everything together. To endure. To keep forgiving. Now I know my purpose is simpler and stronger. To live honestly. To give where it matters. To walk away when respect disappears. I don't hate Tyler. I don't wish him suffering. But I don't wait for him either. Because waiting keeps you tied to a past that's already done. And I choose the present. I choose the mornings where my chest doesn't tighten when the phone rings. I choose the nights where I sleep without replaying old conversations. I choose the quiet confidence of knowing I handled the truth and survived it. Vincent once told me something I didn't understand at the time. People think strength looks loud, he said, but real strength is calm, it doesn't need to prove anything. Now I understand. Strength is telling your own child no, and meaning it. Strength is walking away from guilt. Strength is building a life that doesn't revolve around fixing someone else. If you're listening to this and wondering whether it's too late for you, let me tell you something clearly. It is. Not at 40. Not at 50. Not at 60 or beyond. Your best chapter doesn't ask for permission. It starts the moment you decide you matter too. The best revenge isn't watching someone regret what they did to you. It's waking up one day and realizing they no longer have power over how you feel. That their absence brought peace instead of pain. That their silence became freedom. That's not bitterness. That's healing. This story isn't about betrayal. It's about what comes after. About choosing yourself when no one else will. About learning, sometimes late but never too late, that love should never cost you your dignity. And if I could leave you with one thing, it would be this. You are allowed to protect your life. You are allowed to say no. You are allowed to build something beautiful, even after everything falls apart. I did. And it was worth it.